If you would like to introduce yourself and what your past experiences and what made you want to become part of the political system in Washington State.
Well, my name is Phyllis Kenney, and I'm a former legislator. I just finished in January of 2013, and I was a legislator for 16 years in the House of Representatives, and I became passionate in trying to do something. I'm from a migrant farm worker family, and there were 8 children in my family, 8 brothers and sisters altogether, and we were all born in different states because we worked the crops. But I was kind of lucky because I was next to the youngest, and my parents decided to settle out in Wapato, and I could go to school where my other brothers and sisters didn't have the opportunity. But as I worked in the fields, I started at the age of 5 in the potato fields, and as I continued to work in the fields and try to go to school, and growing up, my parents were always, even though they were migrant farm workers, they were always entrepreneurial and my dad was very educated, and decided that if we were going to have any change, I needed to get involved. And I didn't like how the farm workers were still living by the rivers and in the cars and broken down shacks, because I'd done all that. I'd lived in chicken coops and by the river and in the cars. Or the education that our young people were getting, which was not equal. And high dropout rate and all of that. And health care too, not the availability of health care. So I got started being involved in the Tri-Cities with the Democratic Party. And then I moved to Seattle, and I kept my affiliation, working very hard with them to make some changes, pass some laws that would help our people. And that was before I went into the legislature. And it's a passion that sometimes, if you want to make change, you have to be involved. You just can't stand by the sidelines and watch it and complain. I chaired higher education in the House for 8 years. I served on Ways and Means the whole 16 years I was there, which is the Budget Committee. And then I chaired economic development. I chaired economic development, international trade, and housing. And community development. It was a big committee, and so it was good and a good experience. But when I entered the legislature, when I talk about change, I'm talking about when I started in '78, my first year. We had only spent $2 million for farm worker housing in this state, and as of the end of this session in January, we have put in $127 million. So there's a big difference.
Earlier you mentioned the Supreme Court race with Stephen Gonzalez. Since you worked on that case, what are your thoughts about that, and how, running as a Latino, and him in his case, he didn't win any of the east side counties. He won the western side. Demographically speaking, most Latinos live on the east side. Why do you think he didn't win any of those counties?
Well, I think you'll find in demographics that a good share of Latinos are in that western part now. Right. Because we're not just talking about Mexican Americans when we talk about Latinos. We're talking about other groups. But I think that Dr. Gamboa said that the biggest part was over here now because of the mix of Latinos. In Eastern Washington, the majority are Mexicanos, or Mexican Americans. But coming back to the question that he lost in those counties still comes back to, number one, I think racism is still alive and well. Number two is that our people don't get out and vote. Some of them register, but they don't get out and vote. Are you 18?
Yeah.
Have you voted?
Yeah.
Yes.
You better. Say you vote. If you can vote, vote. But we don't have that. I've talked to a lot of students at the U who are from the Valley, who can vote by absentee, and because their permanent address is in the Valley, but they don't vote. They don't vote. But we have a lot of people that don't vote. We're not all illegal. Those in the Valley aren't all illegal, and some of them register, but they don't vote. And I don't know what it is, it's that I just was on the phone with Pablo Gonzalez, who ran for office over there last year and lost. But this young woman in Yakima had been on the school board, was a good school board member, and she lost to a white woman this time. Why? I had a young woman who was in the 10th grade in high school, and we were doing the hearing on farm worker housing. And she knew farm worker housing from her parents, and she had been, and so I had her come and testify in Olympia in front of my committee. And she came back the next year again and did that. And she became the first Latina, and there had been no Latinos either, the first president of the ASB of the University of Washington. And she made a change. She made a difference there. She's an attorney now. But, so that's what we have to do, I feel, to help you.
Become involved. I think my final question is, you've already made such an impact for schools and for everything you've got done through the legislature. I just feel like, how do you think your impact, that your legacy will affect the younger generation? How do you think? I mean, your story of the woman you just talked about, and that's amazing. You've already affected her so much, and she's a successful woman now. I mean, overall, how do you think your example will help others?
Well, I hope that I have helped others by mentoring them and helping them, and hopefully maybe being a role model. But the best thing about it is that they can look at me and say, she did it, why can't I? And if you haven't watched the documentary, I really encourage you to watch it. It's the Latinos Changing the Face of Washington, because there's 2 young people in there too that are teachers in the Toppany School District, and they come from the farm worker arena, and they got a degree, became teachers, and came back to teach. Now that's one of the best things that can happen, because those young people there will say, and the parents are saying it, but the young people can say it too, well, if Eduardo did it, I can do it. Or if Martin did it, I can do it. And the parents are saying the same thing. If you want to get politically involved, your parents will say, well, your uncle did it, you can do it. It's kind of having a role model that they went through. They had a lot of barriers, they had a lot of hardships, but if you have the ganas, you can do it. You can make it. And I think that's hopefully that's what we can impart on them. The same thing with Justice Gonzalez and others. Dr. Erasmo Gamboa too. He came from a farm worker family, so he's a true role model. So those are the kinds of things we have to do, and to keep meeting with young people and encouraging them that they can do it.